Sydney, like many Western societies all over the world, is becoming more and more culturally diverse. The City of Sydney recognised that increasing cultural diversity can provide many challenges, but also offer many exciting opportunities. Preliminary research conducted under the 100 Resilient Cities program has identified a number of key discovery questions, including how can we embrace our high cultural and community diversity to improve social cohesion and economic opportunities for everyone. In attempting to solve this complex question, we will take a look at Amsterdam, a city recognized globally for its tolerance to multiculturalism and home to some 176 different nationalities. To begin, let's take a look into the history of Dutch integration policy, as this will ultimately influence the strategies that can be applied to the city. In the 1950s and through to the 1970s, a huge wave of new labour migrants came to the Netherlands to seek better employment opportunities. They were considered as guest workers and temporary, so the government of the time did not adopt any real integration policy. However, many of these migrants ended up becoming permanent residents. Although labour migration halted in the 1970s due to the economic crisis, migration continued to grow through family reunification laws introduced in 1974 and through refugees in the 1980s. By then, the Dutch government had finally realised they needed to introduce some form of policy to integrate minority groups into mainstream society. Thus, minority policies was introduced in 1983 to assist immigrants integrate into Dutch society by offering free language education and vocational programs, ultimately leading to the enactment of the Newcomers Integration Act in 1998. This legislation obligated all immigrant adults who had lived in the Netherlands for less than a year to take part in an integration program comprising classes in Dutch language, Dutch society, and vocational orientation. The program was ultimately deemed a failure, as high unemployment and poor educational performance amongst non-Western migrants resulted in negative social outcomes. This failure was in part attributed to the obligatory nature of the program, as well as its deficiency in addressing the issues of integrating the older generation of migrants. In 2007, the Newcomers Integration Act was superseded by the Integration Act. This act aimed to remedy the issues of its predecessor by mandating compulsory participation in integration programs, including the requirement to pass the relevant exams and apply to both newcomers and certain existing migrants. Additionally, for newcomers, a civic integration exam must be completed abroad prior to entering the country. The new integration model had been widely criticized for its lack of support given to migrants, with many believing that it induced feelings of social exclusion instead of promoting social cohesion as intended. Another flaw of this model is that only persons over 18 years of age are required to undergo the compulsory integration program, with those that are under 18 generally relying on the public schooling system. A recent campaign in Amsterdam, in which two primary schools of high ethnic diversity took to the streets to appeal for more white students, brings light to the problem of black and white schools. The formation of these schools occurs naturally, with parents of white children preferring to send their children to schools with others of similar ethnicity. This causes ethnic segregation amongst schools, hindering opportunities for minority students to integrate with mainstream society. The government has yet to implement any official policies to combat this. Amsterdam has considered the strategy of controlled choice to address this issue, with some evidence of success in other Dutch cities such as Nijmegen and Tiel. In the Nijmegen model, parents nominate up to 6 preferred schools for their child. Then a central committee decides which of those schools are most suitable based on their locality and a diversity mix target. However, Amsterdam resisted going down that path due to strong stance on freedom of choice, and as a result have 14 primary schools deemed very weak, compared to only 1 in Tiel. The major lesson Sydney can learn from the Dutch experience is to invest in the education of immigrants coming into our city and ensuring they have opportunity to learn our language and culture. Whilst education policy is relatively favourable for immigrants coming into Sydney, as shown by Australia's #2 ranking for education in the Migrant Integration Policy Index, there remains an opportunity for Sydney to improve its standards by implementing a compulsory English exam for new immigrants intending to come to our country, and reduce ethnic segregation within our schooling system through a policy of controlled choice.